Good morning and good evening, everyone. My name is Sudha Acharya. I'm the founder and executive director of the South Asian Council for Social Services, or SACSS, which are actually it's in New York and in Queens. Actually, it's dedicated to empowering underserved South Asian and other communities into the economic and civic life of New York. I have the honor of serving as the principal representative to the United Nations for All India Women's Conference. It's my pleasure to welcome our distinguished representatives from partner organizations. Apart from SACS, the main sponsor is All India Women's Conference, and then NGO Committee on Human Rights. Dr. Roberta Nassar, chair of the NGO Committee on Human Rights, welcome. And she's also the representative of IFS to the United Nations. And Kuljit Kaur, the president of All India Women's Conference, the largest and most effective women's organization in India, which is doing yeoman services, giving yeoman services to women for decades now. And both are very close friends. I'm very happy to see you both, right? I would also like to warmly welcome our panelists and attendees who have joined us for this important conversation. Today's panel addresses a critical issue, combating the global backlash against women, key strategies for full participation in public life. Over the past decades, different waves of feminism and activism have significantly advanced women's rights and expanded opportunities for women to participate in public life. However, alongside this progress, we are witnessing a troubling and growing backlash that threatens to undermine these gains. According to the UN Women, gender disparities are not only persisting, but in some cases worsening. Current estimates suggest that it could take another 286 years to close the global gender gap in legal protections for women and girls. Can you believe it? 286 years. In early 2025, UN Women also reported that 24% of countries have experienced significant backlash against gender equality. Women remain underrepresented at all levels of decision-making, and gender parity in political leadership continues to feel like a distant goal. Around the world, we're seeing the rise of authoritarian and patriarchal tendencies that are restricting women's rights and limiting their participation in public life. Importantly, this backlash is not the result of women's participation being ineffective. In fact, the evidence shows the opposite. For example, several countries led by women experienced significantly lower mortality rates during the COVID-19 pandemic. Rather, the resistance often comes from challenges of long-established patriarchal authority and the discomfort that comes with shifting power structures. Today's panel will examine how the global backlash against women's rights is silencing women's voices and limiting their participation in public life. On our discussion, we'll also explore practical strategies and policy solutions at the local, national, and international levels to ensure that women can fully and meaningfully participate in shaping our societies. Thank you for all for joining us, and I look forward to an engaging and productive discussion. Before that, let me introduce our dynamic representative, Navina Sitaram, who has represented All India Women's Conference at the United Nations since 2020. With a professional background in telecommunications and marketing, she brings expertise in communications and outreach to her advocacy work and collaboration with civil society organizations. She's passionate about advancing gender equality and amplifying the voices and leadership of women and girls. Here is Navina Sitaram.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. What a privilege it is to be at CSW convening with all of you. So we have heard this week that worldwide, women enjoy only 64% of the rights held by men. We have heard how access to justice is a critical step towards reaching gender equality. Women's full and equal participation in public life, our topic here today, goes hand in hand with access to justice. When women's voices are heard in public forums, at negotiating tables, and in the political sphere, we can achieve equitable laws and justice systems that also work in practice for all women and girls. We have a wonderful panel today that will address this issue from the grassroots advocacy and policy level. We'll have about 15 minutes to address your questions after the panel, so please put your questions in the chat and we'll get to them. So our first speaker will address women's participation in public life from a human rights perspective. She's Dr. Roberta or Bobby Nassar, and she's the chair of the NGO Committee on Human Rights and represents the International Federation of Settlements and Neighborhood Centers, or IFS, at the United Nations. She was a social work professor at Wurzweiler School of Social Work, which is Yeshiva University's Graduate School of Social Work here in New York, from 1979 through 2013. As a mental health clinician, she has worked with refugee communities for over 3 decades. Her work has included providing counseling to survivors of torture, human rights training, and leadership development. I now turn it over. It gives me great pleasure to turn it over to Bobby Nassar. Take it away, Bobby.
Okay. So I'm very, very happy that we're working together today. And I think that's going to be my theme. The more that we come together, the more success we've always had. And I think that now with the backlash that we're talking about, it's become vital that we become very activated. and I think that the kind of organizations that I represent at the UN are basically community centers. And it's basically the same as SACSS, which of course Sudha just explained what SACSS is. So the more that we activate community people and connect them to understanding policy, and then next make sure they're represented in all forms of government, I think we're going to regain. And the thing about power structure is we always have to understand money. Okay, I mean, I think we'd be very naive not to understand the role of money. And as you know, unfortunately in the US, our inequality is crazy now, just like crazy. You know, we have what's called a K-shaped economy, meaning we have a lot of money at the very, very, very top, ridiculously wealthy people. I'm saying that without fear of revenge. Let them come at me. And the rest of the people have less and less. And so I think one of the things that we have to think about in terms of women and regaining our let's just say our empowerment, you know, we become empowered again, is that we have to focus on their day-to-day lives. And we have to make sure that their voices are heard, lived experience. And I know that All Indian Women's Conference does wonderful work this way with women, you know, girls and women throughout India. And this is what we have to do here, specifically in the US. We're falling behind so badly. And I'm going to focus on one thing in particular. It has to do with reproductive rights, women being able to make their own decisions about their bodies. And this, I think, should be a clear thing. You know, I don't think it should be attached to any culture or any religion. The whole idea that women should be able to make decisions about their own bodies. And I think it's it couldn't be more fundamental, right? That that we're able to really protect ourselves and our sisters and our, across the board, right? So I think the more we bring local communities into the conversation, make sure that their voices are heard, and then any of us that have any leverage at all, we should be using it on behalf of our sisters that might have less leverage than we do. And then numbers count, mobilization counts. And so I'm going to really say that all of us have to come together that way. And again, I'd say that community-based organizations, again, I'm going to point to my organization, Sudha's organization, and All Indian Women's Conference. This is the work you do. You do the research and you find out what's actually happening on the ground. You find out the reality. The reality, if you don't have enough money to feed your family, if you don't have enough money to have shelter. I mean, these are basic human rights, very basic. And the whole notion of living in dignity, which is sort of at the heart of human rights, that we treat each other with full respect. We show each other that we care about people that have this horrible situation of not having a decent home to live in, not having enough food to eat, not being able to feed their own children, this kind of thing. And then the other thing is dignified work. I think it's very, very important that, I think I see a sign. Okay. So Vijay just put something in the chat, but okay.
Well, we can address the questions afterwards.
Okay, that's great. Okay, so let me just say that I think the more we make sure that we find out the reality, and this has to do with research. In other words, if your research shows you that the vast majority of people do not have decent housing, the vast majority of people do not have a way to support themselves with decent work, if we find out that the vast majority of people in general, but more specifically, it generally falls on women, much more than men, that they don't have a voice in government. They don't have a voice of, of really realizing that they need to have enough food. They need to have housing. And they need to have education. Let me circle back to education. Education is extremely important. We know wherever we live in the world. And the right to having a decent education is extremely important. So I guess my big message today is that that we know how to create a movement. We got as far as we did before as for movement. And I'm looking at my dear friend Sudha. We've been at this for decades now. And the more we come together, the more we're not falling prey to people trying to divide us, but we say, look, we're in this together. We're going to protect each other. We're going to speak up for each other. The more success we'll have. This is more a call to action than anything else that I'd like to provide today. But let's not get discouraged. I know it's easy because especially in the US right now, it can feel very discouraging, but we have to find a way to focus on the strengths that we have. And I opened our conversation with the other panelists today by pointing out that at CSW this year, the US was completely voted down within the commission when it came to agreed conclusions. So we succeeded. Okay. I'm gonna leave it at that, and I'm gonna be here to share any information that you might be interested in hearing from me. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Bobby. That was wonderful. I now would like to introduce Mrs. Kuljit Kaur, the president of All India Women's Conference. She has worked passionately for the education, empowerment, and rehabilitation of women for over 2 decades. She, as I mentioned, she's currently president of All India Women's Conference, my organization, which is one of India's oldest and largest women's organizations, and will soon be celebrating the 100th anniversary of its founding. She's an expert on the POSH Act, which is landmark legislation passed in 2013 in India, which protects women from sexual harassment in professional environments. She serves on the internal complaint committees of several leading organizations, including UIDAI, which is responsible for the National Identification Database, Maulana Azad Medical College, and government ministries, including Agriculture and Home Affairs. Her workshops on gender have trained thousands of students, professionals, and policymakers on the rights and safety of women, and she has worked with parliamentary committees on this issue. During COVID, seems like so far away, but it was fairly recent. She studied the growing issue of domestic violence and the impact it was having on women's well-being and livelihood. She spoke on this issue at several national and international forums, including CSW. She has presented at many international conferences and was invited to Paris by the French government to speak on India's legal reforms to enhance women's safety. She spent a decade as a teacher and lecturer and as a retired Gazette officer from the Indian Railways. She has also served as honorary vice president and also secretary general of All India Women's Conference in the past. We are lucky to have her here as a speaker today to address us. And now I'll turn it over to Kuljit Kaur. Kuljit.
Thank you so much, Navina, for giving good introduction, speaking such kind words about me. I don't know whether I deserve it or not, but thanks a lot. And very nicely, Bobby has presented the topic. And the main issue is that the women, they don't have the right over their bodies. There are no shelter homes. They're not prepared to live a life of dignity. That's what she has said. But we have been working since 1917 for the women's rights. So it was only 1917, March 8, the day Petrovic women workers deemed bread and peace, that it was declared as an international, 8th March was declared as an International Women's Day. But International Women's Day was not given to us on a platter. It was claimed by women who refused to wait. So that's why UN in 1975, they adopted this transformation for the workers' protest into a global institutional commitment. Now, AIWC, as Navina has also said, and Sudha has also introduced, we are going to complete one centenary now, first centenary in January 27. And we have stalwarts working for this organization. When India got freedom in 1947 and the constitution was being framed, 10 presidents, 10 members of AIWC, they were the ones who participated, and they played a major role in preparing the constitution. What was their motto at that time? What was their slogan? Equality and no privilege, a fair field and no favor. So directly they were there, they participated in the framing of our constitution. That type of role, Indian women, the women of AIWC, they have played in the legal areas also, in constitution also, in other areas also. Now, women's safety, but it remains a significant concern all over the world. We'll be talking about the global position also and about the Indian position also. Because multiple type of crimes are committed every level. She's nowhere safe, not at the home, not at the workplace, not at the marketplace. And latest, which has added to the violence, is the cybercrime. Cities change, perpetrators change, but the victim remains the same. Who's the victim? A woman. A woman is unsafe the moment she comes to the view of a man with predatory instinct. Women are treated as a commodity. The man looks at her like a sexual symbol only, without any respect, without any. He said that women, they're safe nowhere. At home also, marketplace also, workplace also, and the latest addition is the cybercrime. The cities are there, perpetrators change, but the victim remains the same. She is the woman only. The moment she comes in front of a man who has got such a feeling, a predatory instinct, the woman becomes unsafe, because the man always treats women like a commodity, like a sexual symbol, and she starts feeling unsafe. But we are discussing this topic today, and I believe, and I think all of us will believe, that every discussion, every conversation, every action that counts for the progress and safety of women. So even if there is a backlash, we shouldn't stop talking and discussing. We should continue with the discussions, with our actions also, with a conversation. If we want women to get equal rights, maybe it will take 286 years, as Sudha has said. Now, what are the major progress we have made? Since we are working for the last so many years, since 1919. So let's see, during all these years, what did we gain? What is our achievement? What was our gain at that time? Women have made significant progress in education. Just now, Bobby said that education is very important. Yes, we have made progress in education also. Because of higher education, we got the employment also. Because of those employment, we got the decision-making opportunities also. And with that confidence and skill building, our girls, they have excelled in sports also. These are our major strides. These are our achievements. They have been great achievers in the new millennium. Women representatives in India's parliament from 1952, from 5%, it rose to 13.6% in 2024. What is the present situation? I'll discuss it later. That is the achievement we have gained before the COVID also. Gender budget share at present, total of gender budget, we have got 9.37 for the gender budget, for the women budget. Education, there is so much enrollment in the institution like IIT. 76% rise in Roorkee IIT, and the government had to increase the seats also because there was so much demand by the girls and by the young women. More women in higher education as a population than men. So that has also become one of the cause of backlash, because men, they started feeling insecure and jealous because the women, they were striving so much and they were progressing so much. 40% plus of India's Olympic contingent in Rio, Tokyo, and Paris. There was so much of participation by women in sports when we went for this Olympics. Surge in women's cricket. Also, all of you are aware of this fact that Indian women, they have won the World Cup also very recently, and now they are in the Premier League also. In wrestling also, the women came forward, became the international heroes. Women inducted in the army as per the rule, as per the law. Women are permitted to join army also, navy also, air force also. And there are highest percentage of women pilots in India. And all of them, all women pilots, they ran this flight in April 1925. So this is the achievement women have achieved in India also. But now the problem is, have we really achieved something, or it is just a token? So we can talk about this progress as per the population of the world, as per the rights to be given to the women. Very few women, they could achieve this. It is just a token which can show that this is the progress we have made. Now, what are the symptoms of regression? What is the backlash? Everywhere, women are being treated very badly. Globally, 85,000 women and girls killed by partner or family in 23. In 23 itself, in 1 year, every 10 minutes, a woman was being killed by the family member only, by the partner only. In decision-making, 80% of peace talks excluded women. Whenever the leaders of the countries they sit and want to decide about the peace of the world, 80% women are out of that. Only men, they sit and they discuss about that. And digital gap, 277 million more men than women have access to internet. Now symptoms, again, I'll continue. 4.5 lakh women exited in workforce. Now, what was the reason? We'll discuss later on that why women are coming out from the workforce. Though they are highly educated, they are capable, they are intelligent, they are skill trained also, but still women, they get the jobs also, but they have to leave the jobs in between. More than 4 lakhs women, they exit the workforce from Jan to August 25. 40% left due to caregiving responsibility, because they have to take care of the children also, take care of the elderly also, take care of the family also, take care of the disabled also, because this notion is there that taking care of the family is the responsibility of a woman. So that's why, though she is capable, she has got a job, but she has to leave the job in order to take responsibility of the family. Then once she leaves the job, she remains behind what the world is doing, and the organizers, they refuse to take them back when they are free from the caregiving, when the children even they are grown up. Labor force of women, that also has dropped from 70% to 67%. So don't say that women are coming out of that. Women are not leaving the job. They are forced, they are compelled to leave the job because they have to face and handle the other responsibilities. So this is the way women, they join. Because of the caregiving, because of the family responsibility, they have to leave their job, they have to come out of that. And that is how they are slashed from the economic empowerment and they stay behind. As now Bobby has also said that money is very important, shelter is very important, education is very important. We are giving them education also, we are giving them, making them economically independent also. But these responsibilities again push the women back. This is a big backlash for the women, those who are working. Now, women rights authority. So we thought that women have progressed, they got good education, they're being supported by the family, and they had got full flight run by the women. But now there is a backlash. 24% countries are actively experiencing a backlash against women's rights. That's what UN Women has said, and that is what Sudha has also repeated. This is the international situation for the women. So what is our notion? What is our belief now? What is our step? What is our action now? Are we ready to treat women as equal citizens, or we want to treat them as second-rate citizens? What is our notion? What is our belief? What is the belief of a common man? Do the women, they deserve equal rights? Do the women, they deserve equal treatment? Yes, the change is possible, but we must have the desire. Unless we think about that, unless we believe in that, women will never get equal rights. There is a wide gap. We say that the constitution is there, constitutional rights are there, stringent laws are there, but there is a big gap between the reality and what is written in the books. What does the law say and what is the implementation? For example, the law says that 33% women should be in the police, but you find only 3%. This is one example. We'll come to that again. After the slow progress, there is no sustenance but reversal. Whatever we had achieved, we are going back again. The global war brings more pain now. What is the present situation? Everywhere there's war. Who is suffering? Women is suffering. There's more pain for women now, more hurt for women now, because women, they're the backbone, those who suffered during the war. So let's believe that women give life and men, they make wars. This is the belief which strongly have, and I think others should also have that belief that women are there to create the things, they are the creators, and men, they are the destroyers. Now, what is the paradox of progress? What is the responsibility? What is the attitude? What is the condition of a woman? She has to go to the office also. She has to take care of the family also. She has to take care of the children also. She has to show the progress at the workplace also. And she is all the time divided into the work responsibilities and the responsibility she has to undergo at the place. Women are invited to go for education and economic opportunities. As I said, that they are free to take good education. They are given opportunities to have good jobs also. But what happens? Everywhere there is violence. In the home also violence. If you are not doing your work properly, 41% of men, they say that they have got the right to hit women if they don't cook properly. That is the condition of women now. Though they are educated, though they are economically independent, but still, violence at the workplace, sexual harassment by the colleagues, by the bosses, and in the house, they're being controlled by their family, by their husbands, by their fathers, by their brothers. And politically also, now women representation in India, only 11% now at present. And in US also, US also is not very much ahead of us, just 34%. So this is the liberty, this is the equal rights, this is the freedom, this is the way we are treating our women. Men outnumber women by more than 3 times an executive and legislative position in India. Now, regression, scale of violence. In India, now I'm talking about India now. In India, 80 rape cases per day. Imagine the condition of those 80 girls, 80 women, those who are raped by those men. And when the news is given on the TV, it is again and again repeated. The girl raped, the girl was raped, the girl was gang raped. She might have been raped once, but by the TV people, she's raped at least 100 times again and again, because there is no respect for the dignity of women, for the rights of women, for the comfort of women. So crime against women is also every 3 minutes. 70, and out of that also 77% of the cases remain unreported, because the word girls won't come out of the houses to make a report to the police, because the attitude and the treatment which is meted out at the police station to those young girls, those who come out to make complaint against the violence. So
Sorry, you have
psychology.
2 minutes. You have 2 more minutes to wrap up. That's so interesting, but 2 minutes at this point.
Okay, I'm sorry. Now the psychology of, I'll take another 3 minutes. Psychology of rape is not sexual desire, but it is a tool to teach a lesson to the women, those who are enjoying some power, those who are enjoying some education. Now these two cases, of course, I just talked. One is Unnao case where the girl was gang raped and the man was convicted of rape, but the girl couldn't get the justice because the man didn't get punished from the court. Powerful men, they don't get punishment from the court. This is the judiciary. And Hathras case, 19-year-old girl, she was gang raped, accused are just moving freely. They are acquitted because justice is delayed. Not only delayed, it's denied also, and actively obstructed with state's help. Institute failure also, this in hospital, as I said in the beginning, that young girl, the one who was working in a hospital, she was studying and she was a doctor, but she was very communicative, very vocal. That's why people were scared of her, and she was raped and then killed. In Durgapur case also. So in all these cases, we blame the victim. We don't talk about the safety of women, but we always try to blame them that because of her behavior, she was harassed and she was raped. Now there are, on government side, institutional failure, forensic labs, inadequate, fast track courts, they don't move, one-stop centers, girls don't have the access, and nearby fund is there, but they don't use for the welfare of the women. Conviction rate is very low. Out of 3,000 cases of dowry, 64% cases are disposed of without trial, and 35% only resulted in conviction. So stringent laws are made in order to satisfy the public rage, not to implement those laws. We got laws after Nirbhaya, also JS Verma stringent laws. After Kaur Hospital in Calcutta, we got Aprajita laws, but no laws are never implemented. They are never forced upon the perpetrators. So women is regressed everywhere, in the home also, at workplace also. And just see this one girl, the one who was a trained shooter, and she was a coach also. She was shot by her father because he couldn't handle the progress of the daughter. One more girl, the one who wanted to become an advocate, she had to engineer her disappearance because the parents were forcing her for marriage. And then everywhere there's a step. Every step there is a problem, there is a challenge for the girl, for commuting also, at the workplace also, in the colleges also. So that's why there is high dropout. And because of the high dropout, there are suicides also, and there are early marriages also. In COVID also, we saw that income was lost because there were no jobs. Girls were trapped at home. And because of that, schools were closed, there were early marriages also. And it affected the women's mind so much that they started suffering from depression and mental health. So this is what we want. We want some solutions. We want women to come forward, and we want the help and the cooperation of men also along with, which is very rare. Now, how we can change the mindset? Education is important. Protect the girls. Media responsibility is also there. Role of civil society is there, and eliminate everyday behavior that demeans and humiliate women. They cannot become good drivers. They cannot participate in the financial matters. They cannot participate in the decision making. This is the way we humiliate our women every day. Let us shift the narrative from controlling women to empowering men to be allies. To succeed, let us involve men in the conversation to inspire changes in their mindset. So these are the strategies I'll just leave over here. So as Sudha also said that by one estimate, it could be 100 to 300 years to create safe and equitable place for women. Now, I have talked about the progress and backlash, about the strategies. Jameela Begum, she will continue. So over to Jameela ji. Thank you so much, Navina. Thanks a lot. And sorry if you have exceeded the time because there was so much to say, and I didn't know where to put a stop. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Those so many powerful points to consider, and thank you for sharing a spotlight on all the challenges faced by women, as well as some of the strategies that can be used to improve the situation. Now it's my pleasure to introduce Professor Dr. Jameela Begum. So over her 32 years of teaching and research, Dr. Begum served as the head of the Department of English, the founder-director of the Center for Canadian Studies, as the Dean of the Faculty of Arts, and as a Senate member at the University of Kerala in Trivandrum. Dr. Begum has published over 12 books that have uniquely contributed to the field of knowledge and research and served as a PhD guide and mentor for over 25 PhD students. At the national level, she was the president of India's nominee to the Executive Committee of the English and Foreign Languages University in Hyderabad. As executive committee member of Kashmir Central University, she helped shape their policies and research program. She is currently the director of the Cultural and Literary Forum of the All India Women's Conference Trivandrum chapter, and has been organizing lectures and discussions on topical issues every month since December 2021. So it's a great grassroots view that we'll get from Dr. Begum. And I turn it over to you.
It's a real pleasure to be here as one of the panelists of the status of the Commission on the Status of Women, where we are discussing about how we can, in fact, help women to enjoy the kind of gender parity we have envisaged for a very long time. Though the Constitution has given us the right for equal participation and equal rights, unfortunately, we find that this has not been translated into practicality. I would like to start my slideshow with a quote from Margaret Atwood, who talks about what women are in her dystopian vision in the novel Handmaid's Tale, where she makes this very seminal statement: better never means better for everyone. It always means worse for some. And I think that is at the point at which we are standing today, 200 years later, as Margaret Atwood says, by the time we reach 2185, maybe we will have the same kind of discrimination that we are experiencing now, unless we get together and work for women together. In the next slide, Usha, I would just like to go back to what Kuljit had just said about Women, Peace and Security Index, where we find that some countries are better off, like Denmark, while some others, like Afghanistan, sits at the bottom of the list. Out of the 181 countries globally based, the index that was based on women's status across three key dimensions, and that was inclusion, justice, and security. But unfortunately, this has not happened for all countries on an equal basis. And India, when we talk about India, unfortunately, India ranks 131. And that's a sorry state of affairs. In the next slide, I'm just using another data here before I go on to the World Economic Forum's. I think I have lost the slide. when we go to the World Economic Forum's Global Gender Gap Report of 2025, we find that India has slipped to the 131st position due to a widening gender gap in political empowerment and persistent disparities in economic participation. And we find, in spite of the fact, while educational access has seen improvements, the overall drop is largely driven by a decline in women's representation in parliament and in ministerial roles. We find a hardly 13.8% and a 5.6% in the ministerial positions. So this is perhaps what we in India, as well as women across the globe, are concerned with. Why has this happened in spite of the educational strides that women have made? Next slide, Usha. And 30 years after Beijing, India actually faces severe challenges. Fragile economies, the climate emergency, unprecedented levels of armed conflict, and humanitarian crises. There has been an erosion of democratic values and a backlash against gender equality. Next slide. So if we are looking for something better in the years to come, in 2023, we find that the global military expenditure reached an all-time high of $2.44 trillion, double the level in 1995. So more war, and of course, when war happens, women and girls who live within 15 kilometers of at least one of 175 armed conflicts, an increase of 54% since 2010. And women's participation strengthens peace agreements. But in 2023, women were only 10% of negotiators, 14% of mediators, and 27% of signatories. So we are never at the table, and we never need more women at the table. That is one of the strategies we should be working for. Now, if we need to do that, we want more representation in the leadership position. We need educated girls, and every girl deserves to learn. In India, millions of girls are still denied their fundamental right to education. And they understanding the barriers and breaking them is the first step towards a lasting change. Why don't girls go to school? There are many causes like poverty, early marriage, safety concerns, and cultural norms. Now, coming to the role of education, the government of India has talked about NEP, the National Education Policy of 2020. And they have envisaged a number of objectives towards education. One of the objectives that is very seminal in NEP is the transition we have to make from information to knowledge to skill training. Information is something that is available today on the internet, but what is the role of the teacher there? The role of the teacher is to create leaders. And in order to create leaders, teachers need to train the students in lifting their confidence level and creating critical thinking in them. Moreover, digital awareness and entrepreneurship using technology, encouraging STEM education, emerging technologies like artificial intelligence, all these need to be conveyed to the students, and it needs to be practiced among the students. And I must say, by this policy which came out in 2020, it took another 2-3 years for it to be accepted by a number of states. And today, Kerala also, one of the states from where I come, has accepted this. And one of the better things about it is that this NEP policy has talked about universalization of education from preschool to secondary level with 100% gross enrollment ratio. So we'll be bringing more girls into the schools. And NEP will also bring 2 crore out-of-school children back into the mainstream through open schooling system. Now, this is something that is very ambitious, but it is also one way of getting the dropouts back to school again. And national education policy again replaces the 10+2 system with a system that has the children back in the schools from the time that they are 3 years old. But education apart, we are doing all this, but yet, as Kuljit just pointed out to us, though we talk about gender equality in higher education and enrollment has increased over the last 2 years, and we have been able to strengthen the science streams, the STEM streams, yet in spite of all this, they are, what we say, not entering the employment market because of various reasons. It might be due to the unsafe commutes that they have to do from home to the working place, unflexible hours, and the way in which they will not be able to, in fact, go out of home because of the child care and the mother care responsibilities they have in their homes. So education need not always translate into employability. Now, in order to improve the strategies for women's education in India, we find a roadmap. This is a roadmap which I think should be followed by the policymakers, educators, and NGOs in order to build an inclusive, safe, empowering learning environment for every girl. We need safety and infrastructure. We need inclusivity, girl-friendly environments to work in, social support from the community. We need digital inclusion. Now, more than ever, the digital inclusion has become a way of getting our women to participate more actively in society. Next slide. Now, what is the All India Women's Conference doing to help in this? I have sort of put forward to you some of the strategies in which we would be able to help our girls to come back to education, come back to employment. Now, All India Women's Conference is not merely an institution, it is a living force, and it has been doing much to empower women through various ways, through conferences, through participation in social activities, and so on. Usha, the next one. And we started a forum which we call the Literary and Cultural Forum for the Trivandrum chapter. And here we brought together many artists, academicians, theatre, dance and film practitioners, women trailblazers to come and address our students. It was an online platform which we started during the COVID period and has continued with these presentations. Next one. Now, this is something that I want to touch on. This is Kudumbashree, which is Kerala's women-led social enterprise. This is from the grassroots neighborhood groups to a national model. How one mission is powering women's prosperity across South Asia and beyond. Now, Kudumbashree, next one, hopes to eradicate poverty in 10 years. This was launched in 1998. Though 10 years have passed, we have not been able to eradicate poverty totally, but there has been, I would say, a rise in the local self-government departments that came to the forefront and built a living institution to keep up the mission, mobilized women at the neighborhood level, turning collective savings and solidarity into a statewide anti-poverty agent. Now, this is very staggering, and I would say this is something successful implementation of a grassroots, bottom-up way in which we can empower women. There are the neighborhood groups which are at the grassroots level. Then we have the area development societies, which are a community. Then we have the bigger units. And what is surprising here and what is laudatory about this is that it is often these women who work at the grassroots level who have been able to come into groups and communities which have translated into economic power for women. And here is an example of girls handloom cooperative that she started in the district, in a small town of Kollam. And today, the annual earnings for each of the 45 women artisans in this collective is around 12 lakhs per year. So it shows how household income has increased and how these women have been able to go ahead with economic power and being able to translate that power into a home where girls are sent to schools and girls have the courage to go to schools because there is no economic poverty in their homes. So this neighborhood collective is a very
1
good
minute
way.
maybe to wrap up. Sorry.
Yeah, in which go a little faster, Usha. Next slide, Usha. This is again about how, this is just a data on how we have been able to, the members have been able to triple their earnings. And 85% of loan recipients launched a new microsystem. And this, I would say, is a Kudumbashree model which can be a replica or can be replicated around the globe, because it has a decentralized governance, it has multi-sector convergence, it has leadership champions, and it is also capacity building. And in the next slide, I would just like to show how the innovation and digital reach has reached girls through what they call the Radio Shri, which is a radio platform that amplifies women's voices. Then there is the digital dashboards where real-time credit and enterprise and health metrics now accessible to every CDS. So these are all going up in such a way that Kerala can be proud of this Kudumbashree grouping that the government has formed and backed by the government and budgeting by the government. And that is what is important, because through this, they make their own earnings and also savings have scaled up. Next one. You can skill up for the future. And these are women working in different, at one time you wouldn't have thought that they would have reached, that is that women at the lower level, at the grassroots level, they do digital marketing, they do sustainable agriculture, and even solar installation. Next slide. And the social capital has gone up fast. Next slide. Usha, the next slide. And so I would like to conclude with that all change can happen from the grassroots level if we are able to implement it with great care so that women become leaders. And we also noticed that through the Kudumbashrees, they have been able to get into the legislative bodies which start at the panchayat level, and many of them are now panchayat presidents. And the next step, of course, would be assembly, where they would contest for their rights. So it's only from, instead of the top-down way of implying rules and regulations and finding gender parity, I would say that let the parity begin from the grassroots. Let us make the change, and when women rise, humanity thrives. And I would end with saying that let us have a world for all women and girls, safe, peaceful, just, equal, inclusive, sustainable, and prosperous. A gender equal world founded on rights, equality, and empowerment for every woman and girl. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that stirring presentation. And it was wonderful to learn about all these amazing initiatives in Kerala, especially Kudumbashree, and also to really focus on the fact that leadership training in schools is so important for creating that pipeline of women leaders in the public sphere. Now we will be switching to New York State. I'm very, very pleased to introduce Liya Thachil, who's the executive director of the New York State Democratic Assembly. She brings over a decade of professional experience and currently serves as I mentioned, at the New York State Assembly as executive director, where she bridges community organizations, and government entities to advance equitable representation in policymaking. Her work focuses on building diverse coalitions, ensuring impactful resource allocation, and aligning community-driven priorities with actionable legislative goals for the Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander community here in New York. At the Assembly, she founded the first ever Asian American Pacific Islander Legislative Summit, convening more than 2,000 stakeholders to champion inclusivity and equity. She also oversees $30 million in state funding that supports Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander communities while cultivating strategic partnerships with advocacy groups and government agencies. So let me turn it over to you, Liya.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for the kind intro. I'm so excited to be here today. I have to be honest, I've just been taking notes on everyone that spoke before. I'm so honored to be sharing a stage with all of you. You're like trailblazers and experts in this, and I'm relatively new, so I'd like to thank Sudha-ji and All Women's India Conference for inviting me to participate. I know we're kind of shifting gears from talking about global policy to American policy, so I thought I would give you a little bit of an explanation of what exactly it is I do, so it helps kind of frame the conversation. So I run the Asian Pacific American Task Force for the New York State Legislature, and it's just a very fancy way of saying I help elected officials who are of the community or represent a huge percentage of the community in their respective districts and help create policies and deliver funding and resources to the organizations and the people in the best way possible. I work on the state government level and not necessarily on the federal level. So it's a blessing and a curse in that from a state perspective, there's so much that we can do to help support the AAPI community, especially the women. But it also means when we have a federal government that is committed to actively work against women and especially women of color, it means you have to get very creative and very resourceful. And every day brings a new challenge, but it's meaningful work. And I just want to kind of talk about what my organization has been doing in the face of attacks from the federal government. Sudha-ji is well aware of this, but the first target of the Trump administration, once they came into power, were community organizations that were delivering critical care to minority communities. They specifically targeted women-serving orgs that specialized in domestic violence, immigration rights, healthcare, women's healthcare, and just systematically started cutting funding, freezing funding, and essentially trying to cut organizations off at the knee. Because as you all know, all of this work is wonderful, but nothing can be moved forward unless you have dollars in your bank account or money in your bank account. So when we started legislative session, the first priority for us was how are we going to help our organizations that already received money from the state, but also received money from the federal government? How are we going to help bridge the gap? So, like I said, there's been this huge concentrated strategic backlash against women, South Asian women, Asian women. And in general, what the federal government has done is it's attacked our health and bodies by removing, the Title IX enforcement of biological standard. It also, like I said, targeted any organizations that were serving women of color under this umbrella of, well, this is a DEI organization, and that's not considered applicable for any federal funding. It also really, really went after reproductive health initiatives in this country. Even though we are a developed nation, we have the highest rates of mortality for women giving birth, and the highest rates of that are in our minority communities, specifically Black and Asian women. So a lot of the changes that are happening, it's not just like language, it's not bluster, it's actual real policy and cuts in funding. You know, the landscape of US politics is every day we don't know what's going to happen. So every day I wake up and wonder, what will today be? So the way the Trump administration has done things is they keep everyone in flux. And to me, it's a very clear strategy of theirs to always keep you guessing, always keeping you on the defensive, always making you wonder what's going to happen to me today. So from the state level, what we advocate for is to ensure that the state stays steady in our support to our communities. I'm on a little bit on the other end of the spectrum in comparison to our other esteemed panelists. They are in the nonprofit space. They get to work within the community. I work under the government. So a lot of my work is how do we pull the levers of government to help support those that are on the ground and doing that work. And the reason our specific community is so important, whether it's Indian, Pakistani, Muslim, Hindu, like we are a good percentage of the population in the state. Right now, we're about 17% of New York City and 11% of New York State. However, we are the highest and fastest growing demographic. And as we're growing, it's important that our community's needs and our community stays in the forefront and government is aware that we exist. A lot of the issues that I'm sure everyone here has faced is there's a disconnect between understanding what the actual needs on the ground is versus what government thinks is priority. And that a lot of that is because there's no bridge or advocacy between the two parties. A lot of it is a nonprofit doesn't really have a route to get FaceTime with their representative, with whoever they elected into office. And vice versa. Elected officials aren't always aware of all of the work that's being done in the district. So when I entered the role, a big part of what I did was I met with each of my assembly members and state senators, and I gave them a breakdown of every AAPI organization doing work in their district for their constituency. When you're able to provide them with numbers and actionable items, that's when they started to realize, oh, this is a really important community in my district. They are voters, they pay taxes, and they need help. So a lot of government work sometimes ends up being about justifying why is it that we need to continuously support a group. While it would be great that in theory, everyone should receive equal support and upliftment and empowerment from their government, that is not the reality. There is still politics at play. And when you're dealing with politicians, you have to present things in a lens of what is going to be most beneficial for the longevity of their political career. And it's always great when you can marry the success of a specific community to their personal success. And that's a lot of what my advocacy work looks like. It's a lot of, this is why it should be important to you and why you should advocate for it. But the biggest challenge that I face is getting the same amount of participation from my community. I'm a member of the community. I'm also Malayali, so it was really great to hear about Kudumbashree, which all of my aunts are a part of. But that level of organization and civic participation historically does not exist within the Indian American community. We kind of function in this world as there are these opportunities available to us. These are our specific lanes. We will do these lanes, and that is it. We're not going to do anything else. We're not going to make noise about anything that's bothering us. We're just happy to be here, happy to have access, and we will keep pushing. You know, it's now more commonly known as the model minority myth, but it has been so detrimental to the policies and legislations that are being crafted in this country, specifically in New York State, because we are left out of the equation. So a lot of my work is also ensuring that our community has visibility, that they're coming up to Albany, to the Capitol, making sure that they're meeting with their elected officials, that we're expressing to their elected officials that we are here, we have needs, and you need to support us the same as you support everyone else. And, you know, there is this one group that I work with consistently. They're called The Collective, and they are a group of 4 organizations that specifically focus on gender-based violence within the minority community. They serve South Asians, Koreans, Asian Americans, as well as those of the African diaspora. Their work is probably the most unique in that they are doing life-saving work for these women trapped in horrendous situations, but they are doing it in a culturally competent and language sensitive situation. Of the women that they serve, you know, they serve over 500,000 clients a year. Those 500,000 clients don't speak English. And if it wasn't for these organizations specifically, those women would have no outlet to get any sort of help. And those 4 orgs have consistently received federal funding, and all of their federal funding has been completely cut. And they were facing about an $11 million deficit collectively as a group. And they had come to us and they're like, well, what do we do? But they had spent the last 5 years cultivating relationships with their elected officials, making sure that the work that they do was gaining the visibility that they needed. And the state was able to step in and bridge that deficit for them. So when you look at government as a source for support and funding, a lot of it is relationship building, but it's also proof of concept and also necessity. So in the work that I do, it's a little bit twofold, where I work with orgs to make sure that they are visible, that they have the right people in the right rooms, that they get the access that they need. And on the flip, it's also advising leaders that make the laws, that write the budgets, that sign off on these things, to understand that this is what the community needs. So when we're dealing with this onslaught constantly upon women of color in this country, a lot of the recourse that we look to is just making sure that we feel like we've given them enough options to come to us for help, right? Government should be in service to its people because we work for the people. People seem to have forgotten that along the way, especially those that hold power. But the work that New York State does is to constantly remind folks that, no, we are here for you, so tell us what you need. And task force like mine have played a big role because we're able to really help create spaces to get funding that never existed, or to get laws that never existed passed. You know, we have Diwali as a New York City school holiday now. We have Lunar New Year. We passed the ANHPI Education Equity Act, which ensured that the history of South Asians, Asian Americans in this country are taught to all of our children, because we have been in this country since the late 1800s. We have contributed to the building of this country, and we are a part of the fabric of this country, but we are left out of its history. So these kinds of movements are also helpful when you're trying to gain equity and parity amongst everyone else. So, like I said, the 5 main strategies that, we use right now to kind of help women of color, help women of our community is really just making sure that New York State holds a lot of its policies in
1
place.
minute.
Oh,
Just
sorry,
1 minute. Sorry.
I'll be fast. I already spoke about most of them. We make sure we fund people. We make sure we keep our policies in check. We make sure our policies and laws are enforced so that we know when issues arise. And we make sure that we keep our visibility going and that we're growing in power as a coalition. So those are like the 5 main things that we work on actively to, deal with the day-to-day and hopefully build a better tomorrow. But that's my little spiel. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for everything you do to amplify women's voices and amplify the voices of minority women in particular. I think erasure of women's voices doesn't have to be what's going on in Afghanistan. We see that here in terms of legislation, in terms of all of the things that you touched on. Thank you so much, Liya. So we're running a little bit behind, but we do have time for like 1 or 2 questions. So I am going to address one quick question, from the chat. I think possibly Bobby Nassar might be the one who can answer this. So Carolyn Eriks said, last year, the UN proposed a merger between UN Women, which revolves around gender equality, and the UN Population Fund, or UNFPA, which focuses on sexual and reproductive health. And the question is, can UN Women and UNFPA jointly push back against this attempt to narrow our collective bandwidth? Can we refuse to consider merging until the Security Council is completely reformed to ensure women and children's security is the top priority?
I share her concern, and I think it's a mistake to merge, because this has happened before, and Sudha, of course, knows about all this. So going way back, UNIFEM, and I'm trying to remember, there was another organization too, but anyway, UNIFEM merged with UN Women. And the idea was that the more we merged, the stronger we'd be. And I can tell you, just on the ground, being at the UN, it's had the opposite effect. Also, UN Women as an agency is moving out of New York headquarters at New York. It's moving to, I'm pretty sure it's Kenya. And the thing is that all of these moves are not good. And I think you all know that thanks to our disgusting Trump administration, we've removed ourselves from, I would say, all the important UN bodies. We're just gone. And we've also cut back tremendously on funding. So I'm glad you drew attention to this. Thank you very much. I think we should all, not bury our heads in the sand, and we should all come together and say, this is not okay. Yeah, I think we should let our representatives know in all our capitals that we don't think this is a good idea. Yes, you called attention to a very threatening situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Bobby. Now we have a question from Vijay Lakshmi. I'm going to shorten it a little bit because in the interest of time, I know she had asked for 3 or 4 measures to increase participation of women in public life. However, I'm going to ask each of our panelists, what is the one thing that you think would be best in terms of increasing women's participation in public life? So I'm going to start with Dr. Jameela Begum, and we'll go through our panelists. So let me turn it over to you.
Thank you. Navina, what I feel is that, we need to work as groups, as organizations together to promote women initially and to in fact, support women in such a way that they win the elections. Because there's a point in trying to find the right individual. We need to give them the right kind of support, and we need to get them as acceptable to a big community. And they should have a strong voice. Our picking up of the leader is also important. Like, how will this leader perform once she is part of the assembly or part of the parliament? Is she going to promote women's rights? Will she stand up for women and get the budget for women, which is promised but never becomes a practicality? So these are things that first we need to assure in identifying a leader, identifying the leader, and then through working as a community to promote them and to find a place for them in the legislative assembly. I think that is where we should start first, not at the parliament level, because they first have to show their mettle in the assembly at the state level, and then maybe at the parliament level.
Very true. Thank you.
That is what I think.
I'll turn it over to Kuljit ji. What are your thoughts on this? And you're on mute. Yeah.
Thank you, Navina. I think that first there is the immediate problem in the society is that women are not permitted to come out of the house despite their high qualification and education and skill training because of the restriction of caretaking. So AIWC should come forward. We should train the girls and the young boys also, those who can help in taking care of the families, taking care of the elderly, and only then women can come out of their houses. And they should be tried to be trained independent, how to work independent, how to develop confidence, and at the same time, let the men also change their mindset. We should start from the very childhood, because how to bring up the boys, that is very important for the society to learn. Thank you.
Thank you. And now I'll turn it over to Liya. Your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, on a very broad level, change really starts at home. You know, I think the number one thing that we as humans can do is start making the change of treating women equally within their homes. And that starts with your sons. I'm a boy mom. So for me, I actively try to make sure that the way I frame the world to my son is that women are equal to him, if not better than him. You know, sometimes you have to overcorrect to balance the scales a little bit. But, you know, first and foremost, it starts in as us as people understanding and appreciating the value of women and seeing us as equal. And then on a policy level, it is 100% getting more women in the room. Nobody understands us more than us. And we need more of us in the rooms that make those decisions. I have been very fortunate to work for only women, which I may or may not have engineered on my own. But my current boss is the first Korean American woman ever elected to the state legislature. And watching how she moves in these rooms is incredibly inspiring. But it's so interesting because she'll say something that seems very common sense to me as an AAPI woman, like, yeah, that makes sense. And every one of her colleagues who is not Asian and not a woman will be like, oh, I never thought of that. So I've seen the power of having us in the room. So yeah, that's the other like big thing. We need more of us in the room.
Thank you. And now, Bobby, your thoughts.
Well, I actually just want to support everybody else's thoughts because I think they're on point. And I think there's two big things I'm going to support. The whole idea of all of us that are in the position to be mentors, we should all be mentors. And I think we have to really think much more carefully about creating as many opportunities as possible, especially for younger people, younger women. Because yes, let me just say that. And the other thing I want to really support, and is the whole notion of coalitions. We have to resist being in a silo. and only being with people that we're super comfortable with. We have to resist that, especially when it comes to human rights for all girls and women. So I just want to say that, forget that there's some differences between us when it comes to this. Let's all be in it together, including with guys. I'm not going to keep them out of this. Okay.
Thank you. I think that's all the time we have for questions. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce Usha Nair from All India Women's Conference. She's currently the zonal organizer for AIWC and has served as the organization's treasurer from 2011 to 2013 and the vice president from 2017 to 2019. For the last 4 decades, she has actively been working in the areas of alternative energy and climate change advocacy and has been conducting awareness programs across India. She has also represented AIWC in climate change UNFCCC at the international level. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Usha for the wrap up and closing remarks.
Thank you, Navina. Right at the outset, let me thank the organizers of this event, All India Women's Conference, NGO Committee on Human Rights, and South Asian Council for Social Services for entrusting the work of summing up this stimulating panel discussion. It is quite a daunting task because the presentations have been exciting and enlightening, and capturing the gist of ideas presented in these presentations in just a few minutes is very tough, but I'll try my best. And before I go on to that, I'll just a small correction. I think, Navina, you have used the old bio note. I am now the member in charge of international programs in AIWC. I was a zonal organizer at the time of our last webinar when we had a CSW event a couple of years back. But I continue doing all the other work that you have mentioned. So now coming to the topic of our discussion today, we are indeed passing through a period of pushbacks and crisis as we have never seen before. I don't think the world has seen such a period before, where that some of the threats, the most dangerous part of it is that some of the threats are not even discernible. We don't even realize that such threats exist. So 2 very recent examples that I can point out from my immediate neighborhood, that is from my state of Kerala. One is, in Kerala, the organ transplants is promoted in a big way. But then recently somebody has flagged a concern that why is it that most of the donors, the live donors, are women and the recipients are men? So this just shows how even scientific advancement, which is meant for good of humanity, is turning against women in some way, where women are the donors and mostly men are the recipients. So we'll have to go into the details of this. This is an early warning that we are receiving. Another example is about a revision of electoral rolls that has been taking place in the state of Bengal in India. And there again, in the final list, they say that more women have been excluded from the list than men. So again, the question is why? Is it because of ignorance? Is it because of lack of knowledge to approach and get their names included? So many other things. So these are things that our organizations, women's organizations, must be looking at. Look at the early warnings and start corrective steps right at the beginning. Now, let me go on to the discussions that we have had today. First, we had Dr. Bobby Nassar. So she emphasized that working together is the most important thing that we need to do now. And also she highlighted that money is essential for decent living. So we have to ensure that women have access to money, and we have to work with the women to see that their voices are heard, that their concerns are taken into account. education is very important, and there should be more research at the grassroots level to identify basic problems so that these can be taken up with the authorities and sorted out. And she concluded by saying that we have to focus on the strengths we have rather than, go feel sorry about what we do not have. Let us focus on the strengths and use those strengths to advance the lot of women worldwide. Next, we had Kuljit Kaur talking from the AIWC perspective as well as her own perspective. She explained the AIWC legacy, which we are all proud of. We are completing 100 years of working with women, voluntary workers, working with women all over the country. So about the challenges that we face, women's safety is most important because that is threatened everywhere. As she explained, it is threatened at the workplace, at inside homes, in the public places, everywhere. So we have to be very aware of the importance of women's safety. She mentioned some of the major strides that we have taken in India for women. That is, as far as education is concerned, skill is concerned, gender budgeting is there. In sports, they are making very good improvement. And there are more careers open to women. But in spite of this, when it comes to the workforce, we see that there are less women than we see in the education field. Then she explained the backlash, and the backlash, some of them are from within our own communities or our own homes. That is how the responsibilities, domestic responsibilities, are forcing many women to give up their jobs and opt out of careers. And then there is a big gap between policies and law and the reality that we see around us, especially when it comes to safety and security of women. So that she called the paradox of progress in India. Though we have made tremendous progress, still there are these basic problems that remain. And then there is a regression in political space. The space occupied by women is decreasing over the years, though we have 50% reservation at the village level. When it comes to the higher legislators, we have fewer women. Then she's flagged the scale of violence, institutional failures, life cycle barriers that women face, and the economic trap. And she feels that women's ambition is always punished. It is never encouraged, it is punished, and women face challenges at every step. So some key strategies also she outlined. And she stopped her presentation with the slogan, break barriers, build bridges, and rewrite the script. That is the way we can change the way things are moving now. Next, we had Dr. Jameela Begum, and she emphasized in the very first slide, she emphasized on women, peace, and security, where the most important factors are inclusion, justice, and security. Then she also pointed out the fact that in education, India has seen large improvement in participation of girls, in inclusion of girls in education at every level. But then again, when it comes to employability, there is a huge gap. The girls are educated, but they are not found fit for many employments. So that is one thing that we have to tackle. And then the fall in political representation, again, she has also pointed out this. And so she feels that the solution for these things are to have more women at the table. If we have more women at the decision-taking level, we'll be able to improve many of these problems that we are facing now. Every girl deserves education, and it is our wish that every girl goes to school and every girl gets a chance to go for higher education. So she outlined the policy of the Government of India, which is the National New Education Policy, which has many good things, including universalization of education. And she gave details of the national national education policy. Then there are, she listed out also some strategies for improvement, like improving the safety and access and other things. And AIWC's strategies also she has outlined, and in particular she mentioned the Literary and Cultural Forum, which was formed under her leadership to ignite confidence and progress in women. And that has been doing very well. Then as an example of the strategies that we could adopt to face the pushback, she gave the example of Kudumbashree movement in Kerala. It is a government-sponsored scheme which has done wonderful work at the grassroots, where women are made into self-help groups and they are given training, they are given backing in every way, including funding, and they are doing wonderful work, many of which she has shown us in her slides, the type of work that they have been doing. And it is a very replicable model. It is not difficult to replicate this model in other states or in other countries, because it starts at the grassroots with women at the very grassroots level who may not be very highly educated or who may not be very highly economically independent. And we are helping them to educate themselves to become economically self-reliant. And so that is, she has given it as an example for the strategy of facing the global backlash. She looks forward to a gender equal world founded on rights, equality, and empowerment for every woman and child. So that is the outlook that she has completed her presentation with. Next, we had Liya Thachil, and she told us about her own work with regard to policies and funding at the state government level, and how she has been helping communities from a state perspective, and how to deal with the difficulties posed by the policies of the federal government, and how marginalized communities, marginalized women are facing the most difficult time now with cutting of funding and targeting organizations for women, and especially of marginalized women in their work, so that their work is severely affected, including reproductive health rights and their safety, security, education in every way. So real policy changes that are harmful are being brought about, and her organization has been helping many organizations and communities in dealing with these gaps, with these problems. So one of the main problems is the disconnect between needs at the grassroots level and government planning. So what she advocates is that we must build bridges with the legislators, and the grassroots level people must have good rapport with the legislators and explain to them what is the situation at the ground level, so that they understand these situations, and while they are sitting at the policy table, they will understand where support is required and why support is required. They have to justify why support should be provided. And the biggest challenge, she says, is that the community sometimes draws back. They don't participate to the level that is required of them, and they become a little indifferent or maybe complacent by sitting back and accepting what comes and not really putting up a fight to improve things. But then this results in the community being left out of planning and policies. She also explained how for violence is being tackled by different organizations, and how her organization is working along with those organizations to combat this a very big problem. So again, it is through cultivating relationships with legislators, increasing visibility, ensuring accessibility, and she says that task forces have played a big role in getting the policies not reversed, improved by restoring funding. And then another very important point that she has pointed out is that they make sure that the history of the community, the history of the minority community is taught to the children of the community, which is very, very important because they must know from where they have come and where they are and what is important in their legacy. And the 5 strategies that she listed out are about funding, policies, enforcement of policies, visibility of the affected people, and the powers of coordination that they have to coordinate with the government and get things done. So with these, I think I have almost, I hope I have capture the main points in all the presentations. And if I have left out any important points, I apologize for that. So to conclude, I'll remind you about the concluding sentence in the UN Women Report on Women's Rights in Review 30 years after Beijing, which was brought out last year. And that sentence says, we can be the first generation that can live in an equal world. And isn't that a very exciting thought, to live in a world, be the first generation to live in a world which is equal? But now in the background of all the conflicts and other backlashes, especially the climate change problems, we have to realize that to achieve this goal in the present scenario, women the world over must unite to push women's rights forward, to create a world where all women enjoy equal rights, equal opportunities, and I think the most important is equal claim to safety and security. So with those words, I wind up my summing up, and I again thank all of you for giving me this opportunity, and I thank all the participants for taking part. And we had a very interesting interaction this also, but though we didn't have much time for it, so I thank the panelists for taking part in the interactions, and I thank all of you for attending this webinar. Thank you, Navina.
I would just quickly like to thank the SACSS, South Asian Council for Social Services team, because they've just been amazing in terms of technical and logistic and other support. Thank you.